few days ago, it was clear that the price of fuel will go up. The increase was triggered after the product's depot price was increased from 138 naira 62 kobo to 151 naira 56 kobo. According to an internal memo from the Pipelines and Product Marketing Company, PPMC, the president yesterday was saying that Nigerians should expect a further increase in the price of petrol, saying people would pay more as soon as the price of crude oil in the international market recovers. He also justified the latest increase in electricity tariff, which has raised so much dust in the polity. Well, there's been so many reactions to the increase, but tonight we shall be getting some insight into what you have on your hands as a Nigerian. So we look into the reasons of government increasing the price of fuel. I'm now being joined on the program by the Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, Mr. Mele Kyari, joins us from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Kyari, for spending time with us tonight on the program. And I want to say, I know it's a very difficult time, but apart from the president, who said he's concerned with a hike in the price of fuel, another person would be the Minister of State for Petroleum, who is also concerned about this, and of course, yourself. But let's begin by getting to know, how have you been contending with a barrage of criticisms from all and sundry, because this matter strikes at the core of the Nigerian people?
Thank you very much. What we must understand is that criticism, where is it coming from? I think that's the question that you need to ask. Probably people who are not aware of what is going on and what's the basis of those issues that has come up. First of all, I'm sure you're aware that petroleum subsidy on petroleum has been a big issue in this country for over 20 years. And not only that, every corruption that you are aware of in the downstream sector of this industry is one way or the other connected to fuel subsidy. I can give you an example. Several licenses were issued for people to bring up refineries across the country, and none could deliver. Probably very, very few exceptions could deliver. The reason is very simple, because people are not sure that when you produce a petroleum product, at what price are you going to sell at the gate of your refinery? And because we know that those prices are not market determined, and that we know that there will be a subsidy element in it, everybody staggers to deliver on this. And the end result is that this burden is left to the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation and the government as a whole. What that means is government has to provide that gap that exists. And of course, it's very understandable for people to get angry that prices have gone up. Just like the price of every commodity, when it goes up, there can be difficulties. There can be challenges that people will naturally face. But once prices go up, the other natural thing that must happen is that your income needs to increase so that you are able to procure the things that are now delivered at higher prices. You can't do this in anywhere in the world if there is no productivity. And there will be no productivity except there is growth in infrastructural development, industries are able to work, and therefore there's a connection between production and consumption. What subsidy does is to remove that connection, and people are literally saying, smoking cigarette and expecting results. And it requires courage to make this decision. I can share this with you. Only a Buhari regime can make this decision. The reason is very, very simple. People will not appreciate the fact that the lost opportunity is a situation where you have spending enormous amounts of resources, over 10 trillion naira in the last 8 to 9 years, all trying to service that. That also doesn't include the element of FX resources that are lost to this. So when you put all this together with all the resources and with all the distortions that it creates, the natural reaction is that, look, I don't want to lose this, I'm getting it cheap, and therefore with this distortion that I'm going to suffer. But it's not true. Subsidy in itself, by every meaning, is an elitist thing. And I can share this with you. It's only the elites who will have 3, 4, 5 cars in their house, fill their tanks, and also feel comfortable doing this. The ordinary man is not the beneficiary. First, he loses in infrastructure. Hospitals are not built, schools are not built, and ultimately, the brunt of even corruption in the downstream sector is transferred to the ordinary man. Overall, you lose everything and you get nothing. So when people get angry And I can come back to what you're saying. When people are angry, there's outbursts of anger around this. And this will coming from people who practically are not aware of this situation. They are not aware of the loss that they have. And most importantly, they are being engineered and delivered into making those statements. And we understand this very perfectly. We are the national oil company. It's our role to ensure energy security. But you can't do this until you are able to deliver cost. And that cost is lost daily. As price of petroleum goes, crude oil goes up, you lose those value and you are unable to do many things. So the outburst is very understandable, but I can also I believe very strongly also that it's misplaced because the Nigerians are not aware of the opportunities lost. Thank you very much.
In 2012, GMD, the issue of a hike in the price of fuel almost shut down this country because Nigerians were in a rage about that. And one of the issues that came up for debate, I can remember vividly, was the issues of the trust in government. The question is that we've seen personalities in government who are debated that fuel subsidy is a scam. But why has it taken this long for the government of the day to remove the subsidy? It was called under recovery at some point.
Yes, absolutely. The reason why it took this long to come to this point is the persuasion of Mr. President himself. Mr. President is a pro-people president, and I share this very personally. Ordinary people should not suffer by the acts of people in government or by acts of institutions. And also, government is there in the first instance to provide welfare to its people. And this cannot be delivered except government intervenes. So there's a very difficult conversation in government to see how do we move away from this situation into a situation of reality where the market will determine the prices without hurting the ordinary people. This is a tough conversation. Mr. President, until very recently, he was not convinced that we should make this movement. And his reasons are very simple. What do I do with the ordinary people? And the ordinary people, as you are aware, may also not be aware that they are bearing the brunt of this situation. And it is clear today also that we can't afford it anymore. Today, as a result of the COVID-19, even prior to that, there are collapse in the price of crude oil. Our government resources are going down. Revenues are coming down. Now, there is simply no possibility of government continuing to bear a bill of probably up to combine FX, FOREX exchange and the value of the products almost to the tune of 2 trillion naira per annum. This is huge. And government doesn't have that resources today, so you cannot give what you don't have. But more importantly, that it is obvious that the ordinary people deserve infrastructure, schools, hospitals, and they are able to have social security. And without resources, you can't do that. And you cannot smoke cigarette and expect result the next day. And which is why government is very convinced today that, look, we need to shift to this reality. We need to free those resources. We need to remove the distortion that exists between consumption of what is not available and consumption of what you ought to afford. So this is why it took time. It's a very tough and difficult decision for Mr. President, but today we know that this is the right thing to do. You will see colossal increase in activities in the downstream sector of the industry because it will be driven by the private sector. People will be able to build refineries. Prices will ultimately, in the sense that when you produce locally, you are able to have lower prices of this product, not to very large extent, but clearly there will be some decline in the cost of products, even as the market moves. So overall, it will lead to businesses coming back, refineries being created by private sector, money freed for the establishment of infrastructure, schools and all that, and ultimately the common man will benefit. And this is the reason that we saw, and we're convinced that doing this will serve the overall common good. Thank you.
That's a detailed explanation of those who are in support of deregulation. But since you argue that it must come, and a lot of people who are in support of it are also thinking in that direction, but the big question is, what are you doing to buffer the effect that comes after all?
Yes, what you say effect is effect in rise of prices. So when prices of petroleum increases, there's some connection, not very definite. There's some connection between the rise of petroleum and that of other commodities in the market. But it's not always true. If there is any reason to think that this can happen, which is obvious that in some commodities we can see that happening. But what it does is is the collateral benefit that it will bring. More jobs will be created, more people will be in employment. We're able to create infrastructure, which means also more jobs. You're able to create hospitals. Government is able to fund hospital building and schools and so on and so forth. So that the long-term benefit, it outweighs the immediate pains. And what we have to understand today is that at current market price, even in comparative terms across the West African sub-region, even globally, today, despite all the numbers that you see today, we know today that Nigeria's product prices, particularly PMS, is the lowest in the whole world. You will say why? Because we are not producing petroleum today. Yes, unfortunately, our refineries are not working today. But you can ask the question, why is it still cheaper here? Because of volume. 70% of West African supply and consumption of PMS is in Nigeria. And what that means is that you can deliver to the market at prices that is cheaper than other liquor because it's the economy of scale. And because we have more stable economy in the whole of the West African region, the stability of our currency relative to many other currency in the West Africa is better. So definitely, you can deliver prices that are lower than average in the region. So where does that take you to? Because people will see that pains will come. Those pains are very, very temporary for today for two reasons. One, because we just can't afford it today. And secondly, and most importantly, is that in the long-term benefit outweighs every pain that we see today. Yes, people will be very justified to say that, oh, we are increasing prices, price of rice will rise, and so on and so forth. We have seen this situation play out in the telecom sector. I'm sure you recall when the telecom sector, the competition came in. Over time, today we are paying cheap because there is more supply of telecom services and so on. So we know that government means well. We know that infrastructure will be built. We know that this government, particularly Mr. President, can be trusted with these resources. And therefore, delivery will be actual. The ordinary person knows that Mr. President is determined to ensure delivery is made. So when you see this benefit against the fact that the alternative of lack of trust, which makes it impossible for people to trust government, is that you use this money to smoke. I don't think anyone will argue with the fact that smoking cigarette is not a good business and you ultimately lose. So I know also that there are a lot of palliatives that the government is doing.
Yeah, permit me, GMD, to
yes,
comment. I'm talking about the direct practical impact, the direct practical impact of the buffer that you are trying to explain. You're talking about long-term buffer for Nigerians, but what are the direct practical buffer for the average Nigerians who will see hike in the price of transportation and so many other issues in Nigeria? Is there any that this government planned before making the move?
Absolutely, there's a relationship. I'm sure you are aware of the economic sustainability program of this administration, of this government. And the whole idea around economic sustainability is to inject resources into agriculture, into manufacturing, into small-scale industries, so that more jobs will be created, more people will be employed, and then activities pick up in the industry. Banks are able to lend money to people. People are also able to bank, and a number of activities will take place. There is over 2.7 trillion of investment government is doing in this respect. And the effect of that will be jobs will be created, people will have more resources, more pay will come from resources that you don't know. There are a number of initiatives which are targeted at the vulnerable, making cash available to the low income earners in our country. Those unemployed are placed on some stipend that will make them survive. And ultimately, you will see the relationship between these activities of government under the socio-economic sustainability will completely complement the realities that will come up as a result of acting petroleum. Yes, I'm very sure that these activities around the sustainability program will bring the cushion. And of course, long term, because much as we can avoid the long term can actually have multiple definitions. It can be 2 years, can be 1 year, can be 3 years, it can also be 10 years. In a short term, when you see realities come into consumption and demand and supply balance, and realities that people can recover costs, you will see institutions will come in to deliver on mass transport activities. I'm sure you are aware that a number of railway projects are on course. They will be delivered. Many of them will ease transportation. roads are being constructed in a monumental proportion. I'm not a politician, but I know, and I've been around, I'm 55 years old, I'm not a kid. I've seen what has happened in this country. Compared to the number of resources, the available resources that is available to government today, and what was available in very many years that we all know, and looking at the level of deliveries in road, in transportation, in electricity delivery, in production of resources that are used in hospital and so on, we haven't seen this scale of growth compared to the resources that is available in relative terms.
Right.
So therefore, just trust that reality that we have seen today will deliver the fact that, the effect of a marginal increase in petroleum product. Yes, it is marginal because, the scale of growth that you have seen today. And I can speak to you from a professional perspective.
Yeah, GMD, apologies for a moment.
Crude oil
Apology, GMD, just for a moment.
Yes.
Let's take a breather. Yes. But when we come back, GMD, you'll be explaining to Nigerians on the issues of our refineries, the ones that are coming on stream, and what Nigerians will be expecting. Perhaps if the president said there will be more increase in the price of fuel, what could we be expecting as Nigerians? Just for a moment. We'll take a break, we'll pay some bills, and we'll come back to talk more about what is affecting your car into your generator and what you need to do in the next coming days. Speaking more with the GMD of the NNPC, Mele Kyari, after this break, everyone. Join us again.
I call the world's largest airport.
I call the world's largest single-tree refinery.
I call the world's largest sports event.
With over 300 million users, we have journeyed across the world as the largest air conditioning manufacturer to bring Nigeria the most dependable technology, powerful, and yet a comfortable cooling performance.
We cool the world. Now we cool Nigeria. Green.
I want you to please reflect, what was the condition of the infrastructure then, in spite of those earnings? The roads, the rail is dead, and there was no power. Up to now, there is no power. Where did the money go? When we came, we were faced with half the production, one side of the production, one side of the money we are getting, and with all these challenges, security, economy, and fighting corruption. So please encourage your friends, the elite, to reflect on what this administration has done, what APC has done, and what we have achieved. And when people outside the country talk of Nigeria, you see, yes, the most corrupt country in the world. One, I'm doing my best. God has given me two chances. The first one, when I tried the way I thought I was a young man in uniform, collected the governors, the ministers, the president, put them in Kirikiri and other places, and said they were guilty until they can prove themselves innocent. Put investigation panels based on geopolitical zone, basically. Anybody who follows the Constitution, declared his asset, became a minister, a governor, or the president, you couldn't explain what he had, the balance is taken and is put in the federal government or the state or the institution he led. In the end, I too was arrested and detained. Nobody raised up his hand. So when I come back now, I'm trying to follow the system. I'm being called Baba Gosudo.
Welcome back, everyone. Let's get back to the conversation about the issue of the hike in the price of fuel. I've been speaking with the Group General Managing Director of the Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation, the NNPC, Mr. Mele Kyari, who's been speaking with us from Abuja. So thank you indeed, Mr. Kyari, for your time tonight. Let me get your view on what has also been a cause of concern to a lot of Nigerians. And I'd like to know, at what exchange rate did you use to determine the current price?
Yes, as you're aware, there are two windows for exchange rate in the central bank system. And today, for all purpose, we are using this 390 to the dollar, naira to the dollar window for the computation of that. By the way, that's also not the window that you find in the streets, so people have the temptation of referring to that exchange rate. So what we use is the interbank rate, which is 390. And of course, as you're aware also, that changes every day. And we have a frozen average that we were advised by Central Bank of Nigeria for the purpose of those conversion. Yes, there is an advisory from CBN that enables us to make those computations.
How can then the private Nigerian import petrol when CBN is rationing the FX?
Rationing today, yes, is correct. There may be some challenges around FX availability, but I'm aware because I'm part of the Mr. President's Economic Sustainability team, and I'm aware there are a number of initiatives that are in place to ensure that FX liquidity is increased. And that, of course, comes from only two sources. One is from the sale of petroleum, which we, as we all are aware, is critically challenged today. The second is this inflow from foreign sources. This can be loans. It can also be direct transfers from Nigerians who are living outside the countries. And I'm sorry, I just forgot. There's a third window of it. You know, when you export, there are a number of commodities that are exported today in the country, and that also have the literal value of bringing back FX into the market. Overall, because the CBN coordinates the access to FX, you know, with the availability of FX that from the sources that I have mentioned, I know that we are engaging in the industry and also with the Central Bank of Nigeria to create a window where oil marketing companies will have access to FX. That is not in place today, but I can confirm to you that there's an ongoing process. And within very short time, I'm not sure I can give a date because I'm not in control of that. But I know that very shortly, oil marketing company will have access to FX at the same rate that NNPC will exchange the value of crude oil. That will bring parity. That will take out any parity, any distortion in the market, so that everybody will deliver petroleum into the market at the same exchange rate. Yes, I can confirm to you that the oil market will have access to FX. It will not be the street exchange rate if that is your concern. That street exchange is something different, and I'm not sure that's what we're talking about. Thank you.
So in this sense, looking at the pricing template, which of course one of the components is the fact that it depends on the global price of crude. What is the protection of the average Nigerian from exchange rate fluctuations?
Exchange rate, let me repeat, the sake of being repetitive, is that the FX range functionality is within the purview of the Central Bank of Nigeria. That means the central bank can guarantee stability of the value of the of foreign exchange, of naira exchange to the US dollar. So I don't think there's any concern around this. You have seen the growth or the changes to the value of the naira over a period of time. It's very predictable. You can see it coming. And also, it's not in quantums that are worrisome. So to that extent, you know, growth in the value of the dollar against the naira will be a factor in determining the price of petroleum. But if you know how the petroleum works, is that you are buying in metric tons, you are selling in liters. And when you spread it to liters, the effect of the FX is not significant. For instance, if you have a 10 naira increase, a change to the value of the naira, and I'm very sure that the collateral increase in the cost of petroleum will probably be in kobos. It will not be even in naira. So there isn't much of a challenge, you know, except it gets to an exponential level. And with the things that are going on, with the production activities that are going on across the economic landscape, with the chances and the possibility that foreign exchange will come into this country, I do not see any further escalation in the value of the dollar against the naira. So to that extent, you know, much as I'm not a soothsayer, but I don't see any chance that FX rates will come to a level that will have collateral and huge impact on the value of petroleum. Therefore, the ordinary man, to the extent of the FX regime, will be clearly very moderately protected from those hikes.
I have a few more questions for you, GMD. In the few minutes that we have left, let me quickly move into the issue of the refineries. You've spent so much money on fixing the Nigerian refineries, but presently, tell Nigerians, how many barrels of crude do we produce from those refineries?
Yes, first, all the 4 refineries in 3 locations are on shutdown. Completely very deliberate decision to shut it down. Because for 2 reasons. One is delivery of crude oil into these refineries is completely challenged because the pipeline network is completely compromised by vandals, by all kinds of people who will not allow us to operate this pipeline. That means you are not able to deliver crude oil to this refinery effectively to the maximum of their capacity. Secondly, what you call rehabilitation is different from turnaround maintenance. Turnaround maintenance is routine, every refinery does. But when you talk of rehabilitation, what it means is that you have secured colossal loss of capacity in the refinery. It means that you haven't done the turnaround maintenance properly, you have not made replacement of parts when that time is due, and it has gotten to a point where you are not able to operate the refinery at its full installed capacity. Typically, every refinery is expected to operate at least 90% of this installed capacity. With the best of effort, with all the turnaround maintenance that has taken place, it is impossible to run any of the refineries before the shutdown at that level. Our estimate was, well, let's try to run it at 60% of the installed capacity. We can do that. If you do that, what you are doing is value destruction. You will take in $100 crude into the refinery and bring out $70 product. It doesn't make sense, and we decided that what we have to do is to make it work. And that's why we brought the idea of doing a rehabilitation of this refinery. Rehab means fixing it, because as you are aware, refineries are like aircraft. And I know I have visited personally a refinery that is older than 100 years. It's still working, it's still functioning. So refineries don't die like cars or like other assets. So what we're going to do is to ensure that we conduct a field rehabilitation. While you are doing this, obviously, I'm sure you have seen the audited financial statement of NNPC, which we honorably published. We will publish the 2019 statement of account. It indicated that we have lost money in the refineries. This is an honorable thing to do. And by saying this is that when you have a refinery, you have many options. One, typically businesses will just pull down, park them, put them into the park, and ask everybody to go away. Unfortunately, we can't do this. Because they are not in such a state that you can park and walk away, where the National Oil Company, we need to keep this refinery, we need to guarantee energy security. And you will not do this unless you have some control over the process of production. So what we're doing different today is to deliver on the refinery rehabilitation through the best of means, so that ultimately when they come back to life, they will be able to deliver beyond the 90% of installed capacity that every refinery should run. As we're doing this, we are making new initiatives. One of them is to create some splitter plants, what we call the condensate refineries, encourage other private partners to make sure that they establish refineries, also support any other major partner that will come into this play. So overall, as this goes on, as we are able to fix the refineries, and probably in 3 years' time, maximum for the overall scheme of things in the country, this country will be the next exporter of petroleum. From airports of the NNPC, from airports of the private sector, and from airports of refineries that have already reached a location buyer. So I can confirm to you that rehab is different from TAM, turnaround maintenance, and rehab will enable us to get back to normalcy. Thank you very much.
GMD, I'm being told that I have 60 more seconds with this session with you, and I have two questions for us to go. I don't know how you're going to help me out with this, but one question I'd like to let's clarify it. So the NNPC or the government is not planning on concessioning the national refineries. Just a straight answer.
No, there are 2 components to this. First of all, concessioning means you are asking another person to come and take over the refinery, operate it, and return it to us. What we are doing today is, first of all, we are going to do a BOT strategy. That means build, operate, and transfer. We are not building a new refinery. We are rehabilitating this refinery. Government does not have the resources to give to NNPC to fund 100% of the refinery you have. We are resorting to private capital. Resorting to private capital means those who are providing the capital must have some level of control over your processes. That is why we are going to install an operate and maintenance strategy, which will free NNPC from direct responsibility of running this refinery, will support the processes, and ultimately you will have a more efficient process of running. I can confirm to you that there's conversation going on where we install the NLNG model. NLNG model means NNPC, our government becomes the minority shareholder in this asset. And of course, it means that, there will be more scrutiny of shareholders and also becoming more efficient to operate. So that conversation is on the table, but the first thing we are doing, particularly for Warri and Kaduna Refinery, is to have a system where people will put their money, work on it, they will operate this refinery with us, we will appoint an O&M contract jointly with them, they will have a say through the processes, and ultimately we will migrate to a situation where equity will be determined by the Nigerian people. And that is also going on. I'm sure you're aware of what's going on in the petroleum industry bill legislation, and we'll get to that point. Thank you.
All right. GMD, I just have a few seconds to go, and yet I have two questions. The question I have here with you is the fact that since the industry has been deregulated, would you still keep Petroleum Equalization Fund?
Yes, it's a transition. And I understand what you mean. Today, petroleum is completely brought into this country from external sources. Even if it is not, and until all the refineries work and the pipeline network comes into operation, you are not able to deliver product nearer to the customers. It means you must use trucks today to deliver product to different destinations in the country, except the Lagos area. You are sure that when you deliver product to locations outside 200 kilometers of the ports, there will be additional costs. And as you are trying to come into a deregulated environment, you do need a transition where the net effect, you are not selling at the same price all over the place, but you are also doing a transition to make sure that the complete market situation comes to play. There's a requirement of legislation to take out the PF. You won't do this until the PIB comes into play, and this will be part of the process so that ultimately you are able to come into full market situation. The only thing that is left today is the bridging cost that which you are apparently referring to. This bridging cost will be taken out as soon as the full deregulation of the sector is done in the form of amending the legislation, enabling legislation. I know and I'm aware that those things will be managed. Consumers will not be unnecessarily exposed. There wouldn't be significant disparity of prices across the country, but there will be market-driven prices. And this doesn't translate to subsidy. It means that there's a responsibility to manage those prices through the actions of the PPPRA and what PEF is doing. Yes, over time, this will vanish, and of course, it is not for today. Thank you.
GMD, we have 20 seconds for your final word. And that final word will be on the update on oil exploration in the north. What is the update? Just in 30 seconds.
As a matter of fact, we have found significant oil in the Benue Trough. There are potentials for finding oil in other basins of the country, in the Chad Basin and the Anambra platform. And that will add to our reserves. The target of reserve will be met. And ultimately, product will become easier to, and within easy reach of consumers. And that situation is completely very pleasant. And I'm sure that at the right time, we'll make the appropriate announcement on the basis of the law. On the best of it, and I can confirm to you that we have found significant oil in the Benue Trough. Thank you very much.
The GMD of the NNPC, Mr. Melekiari, thank you so much. So much to talk about, but there isn't much time tonight. Thank you. I hope that at some point we might be able to exhaust some of our concerns and questions. Thank you so much indeed. I appreciate your time here.
Thank you very much also. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.